one more thing. Hey, this summer, when you're being inundated with all this American bicentennial 4th of July brouhaha.
Back in 1993, Dazed and Confused hit the screens with a bang. An offbeat teen comedy that captured the chaotic charm of the 70s and introduced us to a cast of fresh faces. Fast forward 3 decades, and those once unknown actors have taken wildly different paths. Some became household names, lighting up red carpets, while others quietly slipped out of the spotlight. But how much have they really changed since cruising around in muscle cars and chasing keg parties? Stick around as we dive into their surprising transformations. Mila Yovich. Long before she became an action icon or a sci-fi legend, Mila Yovich was just a mysterious girl with a guitar,
Watch them fly.
drifting across the screen in Dazed and Confused in 1993. She barely spoke a word, yet her presence lingered. A flash of bohemian energy that somehow felt bigger than her few seconds of screen time. Her character, Michelle, was meant to have a richer story, but most of it vanished in the editing room. At just 16, Mila had already weathered Hollywood's highs and disappointments, but this cut stung enough to make her disappear from acting altogether for a while. Years before that quiet exit, though, Yovich had already made waves. At 11, she was gracing fashion magazine covers. By 15, she'd scandalized viewers in Return to the Blue Lagoon. Stardom had arrived early, but it didn't come gently. Around the time she appeared in Dazed and Confused, Mila shocked everyone by marrying her co-star Shawn Andrews, who was 20, without telling her parents. The union lasted barely 2 months before being annulled. Yet, it marked a rebellious streak that would define her career. When she finally returned to the spotlight, it wasn't with a whisper. It was an explosion. In 1997, The Fifth Element hit theaters, and suddenly, Mila was no longer on the sidelines. With fire-orange hair and a made-up alien language, she turned Lilu into more than a character. She made her a phenomenon. That same year, the film premiered at Cannes and went on to earn more than $260 million worldwide. The once muted guitar girl had become a cinematic force. Then came 2002, and with it, Resident Evil. As Alice, Mila broke every mold. Trained in martial arts, performing her own stunts, and diving headfirst into the chaos of a zombie apocalypse, she didn't just play the heroine, she was the action. Over 6 films, the franchise pulled in more than $1.2 billion globally, placing her among the top female action stars of her generation. Critics may have wavered, but audiences kept coming back, hooked by her mix of danger, elegance, and raw power. Still, Mila wasn't content with just being the box office warrior. Between sequels, she leapt into indie roles that challenged her range and deepened her craft. Whether portraying a tormented prostitute in He Got Game, a troubled drifter in 45, or the fierce warrior Joan of Arc in Luc Besson's The Messenger, she proved she could go well beyond bullets and body slams. Of course, not every project soared. Films like Ultraviolet and Faces in the Crowd stumbled, but Mila never coasted. Even in the most uneven roles, she brought a sharp edge, lifting weak scripts with strength, nuance, and style. And just when people thought they had her figured out, she pivoted again. In Paradise Hills in 2019, she delivered chilling control as the head of a twisted reform academy. In the Hellboy reboot, she embraced full villainy as the seductive yet brutal Blood Queen. From her quiet role in Dazed and Confused to a misfit, action hero to fashion muse, Mila Yovich refused to be boxed in. Her journey wasn't neat or straightforward. It zigzagged with risks, reinventions, and just enough rebellion to keep audiences captivated and intrigued. And while Mila Yovich was busy reinventing herself from model to action star, the next face from Dazed and Confused was carving out a much quieter, yet far darker, legacy on the fringe of Hollywood. Nikki Cat. Nikki Cat's time in the film was short but unforgettable. As Clint Bruno, he was the guy you hoped would never notice you. The mustached menace who brought real danger to a story otherwise drenched in good vibes and adolescent rebellion. Whether storming into a party or throwing punches without warning, Cat's Clint wasn't just mean. He was unsettlingly real. And that raw energy wasn't lost on audiences. Though many of his co-stars played lovable slackers, Cat was the storm in their lazy summer afternoon. What followed was a career defined by intensity and risk. Instead of chasing leading man fame, Cat leaned into the shadows, embracing roles that made people squirm. He had a talent for slipping into the skin of characters who were often morally broken or emotionally frayed, whether as a racist predator in A Time to Kill, a bitter assassin in The Limey, or a snarling detective in Insomnia. You never saw the same man twice. On television, he brought razor-sharp wit as a geology teacher in Boston Public, equal parts sarcastic and sincere, and lent his voice to darker roles in gaming, like the exiled Jedi in Knights of the Old Republic II. Despite often being cast as the villain, Cat never resented his fate. In fact, he once admitted that playing bad guys had become second nature. He wasn't bitter, just brutally honest about the type of energy he brought to the screen. And somehow, even the characters you wanted to hate felt deeply human when he played them. Behind the camera, he stayed connected to his Dazed roots, collaborating with Adam Goldberg on indie films, returning to work with Richard Linklater in Suburbia and School of Rock, and appearing alongside Matthew McConaughey years after Dazed had faded from the marquee. But behind that career built on chaos, Cat seemed to carry a quiet weight. After disappearing from the screen following a final role in 2018, he resurfaced briefly for a nostalgic virtual reunion with the Dazed and Confused cast in 2020. Then, silence. And in April 2025, that silence deepened when the world learned he had died by self-harm at 54. To those who worked with him, he wasn't just a method actor with a wild glint in his eye. He was a man who poured everything into each role, whether or not the spotlight was shining. Nikki Cat may have walked the edge in life and on screen, but the mark he left is indelible. Rory Cochran. You can't talk about Dazed and Confused without mentioning Ron Slater, the rambling, shotgun-calling stoner who turned even the simplest conspiracy theory into a high-debate spectacle. With his half-lidded gaze and mop of hair, Slater wasn't just a side character. He was the soul of that lazy Texas summer. And at the center of it all was Rory Cochran, delivering lines about alien cults and American history with the kind of spaced-out conviction that made you want to believe him. But Cochran wasn't interested in being trapped inside the haze of Slater's legend. Just a year after stealing scenes in Dazed, he turned in a chilling performance in Love and a 45, playing a violent outlaw on the run. It was a jarring pivot, from peace and love burnout to trigger-happy sociopath, and it caught people off guard in the best way. That same restless energy kept defining his career, as he jumped between roles that rarely looked or felt the same. In Empire Records, he dialed it back again, playing Lucas, the philosophical record store clerk with a taste for chaos and a knack for emotional timing. Around the same period, Cochran was sharing scenes with his former Dazed co-star Renee Zellweger, both on-screen and off-screen as their relationship made quiet headlines. But his performances always did the louder talking. When he returned to work with Richard Linklater in A Scanner Darkly in 2006, this time as a substance-addicted informant in a surreal animated dystopia, it became clear that Cochran was loyal, not to any typecast or trend, but to the directors and scripts that let him experiment. That experimentation led him to network television with CSI Miami, where he played Detective Tim Speedle, a man as far removed from Ron Slater as it gets. Cochran brought subtle complexity to the role, and even after the character's dramatic death, he returned in ghostly fashion for a final appearance that fans still talk about. Then, in 2012's Argo, he offered a quiet but grounded portrayal of real-life CIA tech Lee Schatz, proving again that even in ensemble casts, he had a knack for standing out without needing to shout. Cochran's later work only deepened that reputation. In Black Mass, in 2015, he embodied Stephen Flemmi, a cold, calculating mobster alongside Johnny Depp, trading the easy vibes of his early roles for hard stares and icy restraint. He didn't need flashy dialogue, just presence. He also popped up in Oculus and Public Enemies, quietly collecting roles alongside stars like Jared Leto, Rosamund Pike, and Matthew McConaughey, without ever needing the spotlight for himself. While others from Dazed and Confused followed more predictable paths, Rory Cochran kept shifting gears. Never predictable, never boxed in. He wasn't chasing fame. He was chasing the next story worth telling. But as Rory Cochran stepped away from fame, who from the Dazed cast chose a wilder route? One that left Hollywood behind? Keep watching to find out. Wiley Wiggins. When people think back on Dazed and Confused, they often remember the wild antics of Slater or the slick swagger of Wooderson. But Mitch Kramer, the awkward freshman with the long hair and anxious energy, was the one we rooted for. Whether dodging seniors with paddles or nervously trying to impress older girls, Mitch was the heart of the movie. And that kid was brought to life by Wiley Wiggins, a then teenager from Austin, who had no idea how iconic his character would become. Wiggins didn't chase after stardom once the credits rolled. Sure, he popped up in a few more films, Love and a 45, The Faculty, but his most notable post-Dazed appearance came in 2001 when he reunited with Richard Linklater for Waking Life. This time, Wiggins wandered through a surreal, animated dreamscape, pondering existence and philosophy rather than parties and peer pressure. It was a fitting evolution, reflecting how far he'd drifted from mainstream roles. By 2013, Wiggins had stepped away from acting altogether. Instead of chasing cameras, he turned his focus to the digital world. He became a key figure in Austin's indie game scene, co-founding Juegos Rancheros, a collective aimed at uplifting creative developers. Their annual festival, Fantastic Arcade, has become a playground for innovative storytelling in games, while their permanent space, the Museum of Human Amusement, reflects Wiggins's ongoing commitment to art and experimentation. Today, he's studying animation and continuing to explore visual storytelling on his own terms. And while fans still talk about Dazed and Confused, Wiggins keeps a humble distance. In an interview with the AV Club, he admitted he rarely re-watches the movie, joking that if he wanted to get high and watch something, it probably wouldn't be about Huntsville teens driving in circles. Wiley Wiggins might have been the kid we all rooted for in 1993, but in real life, he's been charting his own course, quietly creative, endlessly curious, and still just as compelling. Jason London. From the moment Randall Pink Floyd leaned against a locker, with that relaxed smirk and slow-burning confidence, he became the unofficial heartbeat of Dazed and Confused. In a film packed with eccentric teens, wild parties, and anti-establishment energy, Pink stood apart, not by being the loudest, but by being the calm within the chaos. Played with effortless cool by Jason London, the laid-back quarterback turned reluctant rebel quickly became the face of a generation unsure whether to grow up or just keep cruising. London's performance wasn't flashy, but that was the magic of it. He captured the push-pull tension of being a teen on the edge of adulthood, torn between expectation and freedom, conformity and rebellion. He wasn't just a stoner jock, he was thoughtful, conflicted, and deeply human. It's no surprise that his character resonated long after the credits rolled. At just 20 years old, London had already dipped into TV movies like Blood Ties and The Man in the Moon. But Dazed and Confused catapulted him into cult status almost overnight. But while some of his co-stars chased A-list fame, London took a different route. Rather than play it safe, he chose roles that stretched his range. He took on darker, more complicated characters in indie dramas like Broken Vessels and Pent, embracing the gritty side of storytelling. On television, he headlined NBC's mythic miniseries Jason and the Argonauts, and played eccentric charmers in offbeat comedies like Poor White Trash. And yes, he even made a blink and you'll miss it appearance in Aerosmith's 1993 music video, Amazing, sharing the screen with Alicia Silverstone and cementing his place in 90s pop culture. Despite his talent, the ride wasn't always smooth. Off-screen, London faced his share of struggles. In 2009, he helped guide his brother Jeremy through addiction recovery, only for their relationship to turn tense when public family drama and a bizarre kidnapping story unfolded the following year. Then came a pair of troubling arrests in 2013 and again in 2021, with headlines often overshadowing his work. Still, through every stumble, London kept showing up. With over 100 acting credits under his belt, he quietly built a body of work that reflects persistence, even if not stardom. Today, he continues to act in both indie films and television. He may not be leading blockbuster franchises, but Jason London's portrayal of Pink Floyd remains unforgettable. A timeless symbol of youthful resistance and quiet rebellion, captured in that one endless summer night back in 1993. And just like Jason London brought quiet rebellion, what did Adam Goldberg's intense, fast-talking energy reveal about the hidden anxieties of 90s youth? Stay tuned to find out. Adam Goldberg. As Mike Newhouse, Goldberg delivered one of the film's most unexpectedly magnetic performances. Amid the haze of weed smoke and easygoing vibes, his character stood out like a live wire in a bucket of water. He wasn't just the snarky guy with one-liners and sarcastic jabs. Mike was a ball of anxiety wrapped in existential dread. He overthought everything, flinched at every insult, and yet somehow still managed to throw a punch at the school bully before awkwardly asking, "Do you want to dance?" It was absurd, chaotic, and weirdly perfect. But if Goldberg's character was always on edge, the actor behind him was equally unpredictable in his career choices. While he might dismiss his dazed performance as some of his worst acting ever, fans and critics would probably disagree. That performance, his third feature film, showcased the restless, brainy persona he would continue to explore in roles for decades. Not long after, he was being directed by Steven Spielberg in Saving Private Ryan as the wisecracking, doomed Private Mellish. Then came A Beautiful Mind, where he played Russell Crowe's fast-talking roommate, and 2 Days in Paris, where his blend of wit and neurosis made him painfully relatable. What makes Goldberg even more fascinating is his refusal to be boxed in. One day, he's Chandler Bing's deranged roommate on Friends. The next, he's a deadly silent assassin in Fargo, learning American Sign Language from scratch just to make the role authentic. He voiced conspiracy-driven thinkers in Waking Life, played an over-the-top hero in The Hebrew Hammer, and appeared in both network dramas and cult comedies without ever chasing the spotlight too hard. Outside of acting, Goldberg's creative fire burns just as brightly. He writes, directs, and scores his own indie films, including Scotch and Milk and No Way, Jose. Under the moniker The Goldberg Sisters, he's released experimental music where he plays nearly every instrument himself. Even his analog photography has found its way into art galleries and publications, often paired with moody performances that blend sound and visuals in unexpected ways. From Mike Newhouse's neurotic dance partner to a multidisciplinary artist who never stops pushing boundaries, Adam Goldberg didn't just leave his mark on Dazed and Confused, he used it as a launchpad for a career that defies definition. And just when you thought teen rebellion couldn't go further, What made the next character the most unforgettable villain of them all? Keep watching. Ben Affleck. In a sea of laid-back stoners and easygoing misfits, O'Banion was the kind of guy you hoped would slip on his own ego. And in many ways, he did. Played with brutal conviction by a young Ben Affleck, the character became the film's most hiss-worthy villain, and oddly, one of its most unforgettable. What made Affleck's turn as O'Banion so striking wasn't just the character's raw aggression. It was how much Affleck leaned into the role with charm that made you hate him more. Richard Linklater famously said he needed someone likable enough to pull off a character so despicable. Affleck, with his all-American grin and towering presence, delivered the perfect storm of charisma and cruelty. It was the kind of early performance that didn't scream leading man, but hinted at something deeper: duality, edge, potential. But when Dazed and Confused wrapped, Affleck's path didn't follow the same arc as many of his castmates. He wasn't typecast as the bully or the jock. Instead, he zigzagged through roles in indie comedies like Glory Days and Mallrats, finding footing just long enough to surprise everyone in 1997 with Chasing Amy. That same year, alongside lifelong friend Matt Damon, he co-wrote and starred in Good Will Hunting, a career-defining script that earned them both an Oscar before either had turned 26. Suddenly, Affleck was Hollywood's next big thing, headlining summer blockbusters like Armageddon, Pearl Harbor, and The Sum of All Fears. But the spotlight was unforgiving. Tabloid drama, public breakups, and a string of critical flops like Giggly and Surviving Christmas made Affleck feel more like a punchline than a powerhouse. Still, the man who once played a sadistic senior knew how to fight back. Reinvention came behind the camera, starting with Gone Baby Gone in 2007, followed by the gripping The Town, and then Argo, which won Best Picture in 2013. Affleck proved he wasn't just capable, he was brilliant. And even as he returned to acting, taking on Batman in the DCEU, or leading the way back with heartbreaking honesty, he brought with him a maturity and grit, forged through years of missteps and hard-won success. The same guy who once stood drenched in white paint, humiliated on screen, is now one of the most respected directors and actors of his generation. Ben Affleck didn't just outgrow Fred O'Banion, he demolished the mold entirely. Anthony Rapp. Sliding into the haze of Dazed and Confused, where parties roared and paddles flew, Tony Olson offered a gentler kind of rebellion, one shaped more by books than beer. Played with thoughtful nuance by Anthony Rapp, Tony wasn't the loudest or the wildest, but he stood out in his own way, sharp, philosophical, and somehow always a little lost in thought. While his friends chased late-night thrills, Tony delivered lines about Abraham Lincoln's dreams and stumbled into a sweet connection with freshman Sabrina Davis. In a film overflowing with noise, he was the quiet one, worth leaning in to hear. But Rapp was never meant to be a background character, not in that movie, and certainly not in his career. Even before Dazed, he had landed a role in Adventures in Babysitting, a light-hearted introduction to a path that would take many unexpected turns. His journey wasn't about chasing box office hits or franchise fame. It was about choosing parts with meaning, roles that made you think, feel, and sometimes ache a little. Whether playing a math whiz's colleague in A Beautiful Mind or stepping into ensemble dramas like 6 Degrees of Separation or School Ties, Rapp built a reputation for bringing emotional intelligence to every role. Still, it was the stage where his voice echoed the loudest. In Rent, he became Mark Cohen, the lonely documentarian capturing love and loss in New York's East Village. Jonathan Larson had written the part with Rapp in mind, and from the off-Broadway debut to the 2005 movie adaptation, Rapp gave that role everything he had, turning it into a cultural touchstone. He didn't stop there. he published a memoir, turned it into a one-man show, and founded Broadway Con to celebrate the very world that had shaped him. He kept evolving, too. In Star Trek Discovery, Rapp broke new ground as Lieutenant Stamets, the franchise's first openly gay character, created from the start that way. And when real-life truths needed to be told, he didn't flinch. In 2017, Rapp's voice helped spark a movement in Hollywood, proving once again that sometimes the quiet ones are the ones who change everything. Marissa Ribisi. Then came Cynthia Dunn, observant, sharp, and effortlessly cool. While the guys debated dreams and dodged fights, Cynthia hovered just outside the chaos, dropping thoughtful insights and holding her own in a sea of testosterone. Played with disarming honesty by Marissa Ribisi, Cynthia wasn't chasing attention or trying to blend in. She was simply herself. Open-minded, open-hearted, and rocking red curls, she stood as one of the film's most grounded and likable characters. And when she casually agreed to hit up an Aerosmith concert with McConaughey's Wooderson, she cemented her place as one of the film's quiet victories. Before Dazed and Confused hit theaters in 1993, Ribisi was already circling the edges of Hollywood. Early roles on shows like Baywatch, My Two Dads, and DEA gave her a foothold. But it was Linklater's coming-of-age masterpiece that gave her something to dig into. As Cynthia, she formed part of the nerdy but endearing trio alongside Adam Goldberg and Anthony Rapp. While their characters mused about society and adolescence, Cynthia grounded their conversations with calm, curious energy. She didn't just exist in their orbit, she anchored it. Post-Dazed, Ribisi branched out with roles that ranged from comedic to offbeat. She popped up in Pleasantville, The Brady Bunch movie, and Don's Plum, sharing scenes with actors like Leonardo DiCaprio and Tobey Maguire before they became household names. She even co-wrote and starred in Some Girl in 1998, a small indie film that explored romantic uncertainty in 90s Los Angeles. On TV, she appeared in shows like Friends, Grace Under Fire, Felicity, and Watching Ellie, proof that she could hold her own in both ensemble casts and smaller productions. But around 2003, Ribisi began stepping away from acting. Rather than chase fame, she focused on building something else, launching a fashion line called Whitley Crouse with partner Sophia Banks in 2007. The label's quirky, creative designs quickly gained attention, landing in fashion magazines like Vogue and Elle. Off-camera, she raised 2 children with her then-husband and musician Beck, whom she married in 2004. Interestingly, Beck's mother had also delivered Marissa and her twin brother, actor Giovanni Ribisi. A strange twist that somehow fits the offbeat charm she always carried. And just when you thought the upperclassmen couldn't get any worse, what made Darla Marks the queen of chaos? Stay tuned to find out. Parker Posey. Parker Posey didn't need a lengthy monologue in Dazed and Confused to steal the scene. Her wicked smirk and drill sergeant energy said it all. As the ringleader of the senior girls' hazing ritual, she turned every word into a cutting joke and made high school cruelty oddly entertaining. In a film filled with slackers and sweethearts, Darla was pure chaos, and Posey made sure you remembered her. While her role in Dazed was brief, it was anything but forgettable. It hinted at something that Hollywood would come to recognize throughout the 90s and beyond. Posey wasn't just another actress. She was a disruptor. She leaned into characters who were complicated, electric, and wonderfully weird. Where others sought polished lead roles, Posey chased stories that broke the mold. And that instinct led her straight to indie fame, earning her the nickname Queen of the Indies by Time magazine and praise from The New Yorker as one of the most versatile character actresses of her time. Before taking over the indie scene, Posey got her start on the soap opera As the World Turns, but it was films like Party Girl and The House of Yes that defined her brand of offbeat brilliance. She didn't just play quirky characters, she gave them heart, voice, and strange rhythm. Whether she was a rebellious librarian, a delusional Jackie Kennedy obsessive, or a clueless dog lover in Best in Show, she knew how to make you laugh and squirm at the same time. Her long-standing collaboration with director Christopher Guest, across mockumentary gems like A Mighty Wind and For Your Consideration, only cemented her legacy. But even in mainstream films like Scream 3, Superman Returns, or Café Society, she never played it straight. She brought the same unpredictable energy to every role, making small parts feel seismic. More recently, Posey shifted into TV, where she played everything from mysterious figures in Lost in Space to schemers in The White Lotus. No matter the platform or genre, she remains a scene stealer, just like she was back in that high school parking lot, making hazing look hilariously unhinged. Matthew McConaughey. Matthew McConaughey keeps getting older, but David Wooderson stays the same age. McConaughey is now one of Hollywood's biggest stars, yet Wooderson, the mustached, laid-back guy who lingered around the high school scene, remains his most iconic role. When Dazed and Confused hit theaters in 1993, it quietly launched McConaughey into pop culture history with just 3 words: all right, all right, all right. What's wild is that McConaughey nearly missed out on it all. He wasn't part of the original cast lineup. In fact, he wasn't even acting professionally at the time. But one spontaneous night at an Austin bar changed everything. After striking up a conversation with casting director Don Phillips over drinks, he was invited to read for a small role. That role, intended to be little more than a background presence, was Wooderson. But when McConaughey stepped in front of the camera with that confident drawl and effortless cool, something clicked. Even director Richard Linklater, hesitant at first, couldn't deny the magnetism. It didn't take long for McConaughey's few scenes to steal the spotlight. While others chased girls or dodged paddles, Wooderson strolled through the chaos with a smirk and a philosophy. It was mostly improv, but it worked. And it sparked a journey no one saw coming. From there, McConaughey made his way through small but gripping roles in films like Lone Star and A Time to Kill, before briefly becoming the go-to romantic lead in early 2000s rom-coms. Then came The McConaissance, that striking comeback era where he traded charm for grit. He vanished into roles in Dallas Buyers Club, Mud, and True Detective, each performance peeling back a new layer of range and depth. His transformation earned him an Academy Award and reminded Hollywood that his talent ran far deeper than his Southern charm. Still, no matter how many films he leads or awards he earns, there's always a piece of David Wooderson trailing close behind. Because Dazed and Confused didn't just launch a career, it captured McConaughey at his rawest, before fame, before polish. It was the perfect storm, one lucky encounter, one laid-back line, and one unforgettable character that would follow him forever. But what do you think of the Dazed and Confused cast, where some soared to stardom while others faded from view? We'd love to hear your thoughts, so don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe.